Imagine there's no power, no running water, the airplanes don't fly. What have these environments, these systems in common? Well, they're steered by OT, operational technology, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Threat Talks. My name is Lieuwe Jan Koning, and here from San Francisco at the RSA conference, we are guests at the offices of Venable. Let's get on to it. Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity. Let me start by introducing our guests of today. First of all, Clarke, welcome.
Thank you.
You are the Senior Director of Cybersecurity Services here at Venable. And before this, I have to pick on it's impressive. You've been the Senior Director, Cyber and Emerging Technology at the National Security Council. And you've also been the Assistant National Cyber Director for Planning and Operations at the Office of the National Cyber Director.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
That's a ton of experience in the field, focused on national security, on OT and all that. So thrilled to talk to you about this. I was wondering, was there do you have an example of a very simple to fix issue that you have witnessed once?
I unfortunately have one right at the top of my head of operational technologies that we talked about using default passwords of 1111. And much like I tell my parents and my kids, please God, change your passwords upon first use, that would have been a great solution to the challenge we had with that password. And, one of the things I learned very shockingly is that this is not uncommon. So change your password. I'd say that. Well,
we already have our first takeaway for today.
Exactly.
Thank you. Our other guest of today is Patrick Ford. He is with Schneider Electric, and he is America's cybersecurity vice president and also CISO of the company. And also a ton of experience. You started your career in cyber at the FBI.
Correct.
And you're currently involved with CISA in a project called the Installed Base Initiative. It's all around OT, and we're going to learn a lot about that today as well. Looking forward to that. Could you summarize for me what is the difference, if we're talking about OT, between IT and OT?
Sure. So IT is information technology. It stores, transmits, from your laptop, information. OT is controls processes, controls water flow, controls manufacturing, controls the window washer device when it comes down to wash windows. So it controls movement predominantly. It doesn't really store data, but it does have firmware. It is connected to a network. It can be, but it doesn't transmit information.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So, like I said, in those industries, like where electricity plays a role in the harbor and all those, that's constantly things has to. These are the cool things from a technologist point of view. Controlling a bridge, for example, instead of a blinking cursor on my screen.
The information that it is transmitting is related to the process that it's performing, or the energy that it's managing. It's not data per se, like personal information, things like that. Intellectual property. That's all on the IT side of the network.
And at Schneider, you are responsible for both as a CISO?
Correct. I work in both areas.
Yeah. So you know a lot about how these things are different. Could you tell us a little bit what are the security aspects that are? How is it more difficult to do security for OT, for example, or how is that? What are the characteristics there? Why is it seen differently?
Well, historically, I think they've been seen differently, or at least cared for differently. But they're very similar. They both require monitoring. They both require updating, and they both require securing. So very similar in that regard. The difference is that in the OT world, it's highly available. You might be having a process that's running 24/7, whether it's a refinery, could be a manufacturing site. It's running 24/7. The IT world, 12 hours, but your employees are working, you're backing up data, but highly available in the OT side. IT, of course, the same, but delivering patches and maintenance on the OT side is very difficult.
Yeah, it's hard to
having a patch window, and because it could disrupt the process is very difficult to obtain.
Yeah, and I can imagine it's also easy to calculate downtime, the cost of downtime on OT. Much more. I mean, if my laptop doesn't work for a day, I don't like that. But
for one person, but if it's many people,
true.
It can be very disruptive.
Yeah. And you showed me a little bit of some initiatives that you have inside your company. What struck me there is that one of the things that need to be done, and not just in with Schneider, but everywhere, is to figure out what devices are available, and they're even because they are simply connected to the internet. That's why is that? Why are all these? Why would I need the camera or my crane to be accessible and visible in Shodan, if you will?
Right. So, in the IT world, historically, very, very proactive in identifying and maintaining assets and who's on your network and identity access management, things like that. In the OT world, historically, and more so now, but it could have been maintained by the facilities manager. It could have been maintained by the equipment manager in a manufacturing site. So even the optics for a CISO to even know about that piece of equipment historically may not have existed. It's becoming more and more prevalent now that, that OT world's just as important as the IT world.
I think it's really important to realize that a lot of the operating technology in critical infrastructure, which we've talked about, power, water, food and agriculture, critical manufacturing, a lot of that technology was installed before we really talked about cybersecurity, before that really became a topic where we were all focused on it. So this technology
Hackers
has
did not
been
exist yet then.
I mean, some of them were probably not born, some of them were, but a lot of it was installed a while ago because, as Pat said, it's really about availability and keeping those processes running. And one of the things that we have seen is a lot of this technology was installed, as I said, years ago, but there was an intent to need to monitor that technology, as Pat said. We've got the security operations centers for IT. There's a monitoring of OT, and a lot of that was intended to be more efficient by making it remote monitoring. That led some folks to put their operating technology online so that you can find it on Shodan. It was intended to be a way to make it more efficient to check on the status of the technology. Is that pump working? Is that gauge properly measuring the pressure of whatever the process may be? And so it was an ease to be able to remote in and look at that technology without having to dispatch someone to a particular site.
Yeah, instead of going that far in your car, then order a DSL line.
Exactly. And so it made sense to be able to do things remotely, but it was done without the thought of cybersecurity at the forefront. And I think that's where we are in a lot of places with operating technology. It's still, as Patrick said, we're still bringing it together. And I don't think I want to be very clear, I don't think there was nefarious intent by anybody when we were doing this. Maybe there was, but I'm going to be glass half full here in that it was intended to ensure that the processes were running and try to find ways to do that more efficiently. But sometimes we trade efficiency for security, and that's where we are right now.
And I can imagine. I mean, no firewall in between also means one point of failure less, right? I don't know, Patrick, if you go to a plant manager and say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to introduce this extra piece of technology, a firewall that closes this down."
Well, to that plant manager, that could be risk. Because there's something else with that firewall and that highly available piece of equipment that's critical to the manufacturing or the function of the team. If that breaks, then getting that fixed would be downtime, which in some operations could be very costly.
Yeah, that's such a different perspective than I would have from a security perspective. To me, it's like risk to keep it open there. It's like a disaster waiting to happen. But to a plant manager, it's like, no, probably never had an issue before because yes, it may be on Shodan, but who is interested in me?
If it
You
ain't
have
fixed,
to
don't break
explain
it.
Shodan to them first.
Oh, Shodan. Yeah. True.
No, to the plant manager to say, hey, the cyber threat actors can find
Look, we go on this website.
Look at all this.
This is you. This is your equipment.
Going through the moment of explaining what all this means to them.
But then they have to figure out that the password is 1111.
Which they can find on YouTube.
And they may not even known that it was facing the internet. Look,
correct.
20, 15 years ago, integrators, when they were doing and creating the OT environment, this wasn't a concern.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, Caitlin, it was something they could use to monitor it remotely. It could be something that was remote, constant feedback on pressure or whatever the device was doing, constant monitoring to make sure everything was functioning properly. And when it was installed, that wasn't a consideration or may not have been a consideration.
Yeah. And then transitioning, that is really a transition that requires a lot of planning, I guess. Yeah. So let's explore a little bit. It's not like nothing is happening at the moment. We see instance going back and forth. Caitlin, I know you know a lot about stuff that has gone wrong. Can you?
I know. I think people used to tease me about being the harbinger of doom. If they saw me, it was something went wrong. So I can say that in 2024, in the U.S., we saw record levels of attacks against operating technology. Across several sectors. And one of the reasons why it was so successful is because there are common components. When we talk about the IT sector, we all have our firewalls, we have our VPNs, we have different security tools. In OT, there's not as many, at least in my experience, there wasn't as many vendors because there's unique folks who make certain parts of the operating technology. So if you found a vulnerability in one of those devices, it was likely going to be in multiple utilities and multiple plants. So if you were able to get into one, you can try it across multiple. And so what we saw was record levels of attacks against ICS in the U.S. last year.
Can you explain ICS for us?
Industrial control systems. Again, it's a type of operating technology that controls processes, things like water flow, things like pressure. And so what we have seen is cyber threat actors being able to take advantage of vulnerable ICS or OT devices. As we've talked about, some of these are internet connected, and using similar techniques as we've seen with attacks against IT, being able to exploit weak or default passwords or vulnerabilities. They were able to manipulate some processes. No one single attack led to significant impact or disruption to services. I think what it shows is that there is an intent to not only attack information technology, but operating technology.
What could happen to the country if you're describing it as you have a golden key, right? So you can go to several of those ICS components at the same time or in parallel, and then control them. So you could do nasty things then, if you have bad intent.
You could do nasty things. So I have an emergency management background. I have responded to many natural disasters, or have been part of responses to many natural disasters. And when there is no power and there is no water, there's a lot of
that's what happens. No water, no tap water.
It could potentially. I mean, again, it all depends on what the technology is controlling in the process that it's managing. And so it could be anything from overflowing of water tanks to just increasing pressure, so somebody has to go over to the device and see what's going on and maybe take it offline. There's a lot of different things that could happen. And when we talk about, I spend a lot of time in the U.S. government, and I always felt that part of my responsibility was ensuring that the services and that Americans and everyone in the U.S. relied on were still there,
Mhm.
right? Power, water, everything that we've talked about, healthcare. And so my concern was the ability to manipulate operating technology brings more risk to whether or not those services will be available
Mhm.
to everyone around this country. And I have a lot of it. We see what happens when power outages last days. Customers get upset. Imagine that in multiple places
Mhm.
at the same time.
There was a nice power outage in Spain this week.
Exactly.
And that was not a cyber attack.
Not a cyber attack,
but you
but it
see
can
what the ramifications are of such a thing at scale. Huh?
exactly. And it's those types of traffic lights being out because the power's down. Those things that disrupt daily life is really what we're talking about here.
Well, there are real incidences, like you mentioned, Caitlin. I mean, one of the things we do is we do cyber exercises. We recreate potential issues that could possibly happen, and we work with customers on those, and just to help the communication flow and what is important to them. How do we get them back up and running? What type of specialists do we have that can help our customers get back up and running? So we plan for these types of events by doing
we've
crisis
practiced
management
the communication
exercises.
lines and all that, so at least you don't have to figure that out as well in addition to the problem. Yeah.
Ideally, knock wood, it's you don't need it. But it doesn't, whether you're practicing with product A, it could happen with product B. At least you have the muscle memory of dealing with a crisis when it relates to a product if it impacts customers.
It's like the fire drill. We do those as well.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Why not for cybersecurity? So everybody. So if your company hasn't done a cyber drill in the last 12 months, then
I think a lot of companies do cyber drills, but I think some of those drills are on the IT side of the house. Because again, I think ransomware became, in a very important way, became the top of mind for a lot of folks is, what about disruption to our IT system? And so you do a lot of exercises or simulations on what could possibly happen on IT. I am not as familiar with a lot of companies doing that on the OT side.
Yeah, we do it on the OT side, and we also, we do it with products, and then we also engage with law enforcement. We've done it with CISA. We've done it with the FBI, because we want to show the information that we can pass relative to our equipment, how that can be used to alert maybe the public, or asset owners, through the CISA, mechanisms or the ISAC mechanisms. So we draft our communications. They're all, so we learn what information and does the FBI need as they're not going to be disruptive they never are. I mean, that's not the way law enforcement and CISA help. They help and help you recover, and they help other asset owners prepare and respond so that they don't become victims. So we practice that muscle memory too, working with law enforcement, how to pass evidence, how to accept intelligence to help respond. So, because may not be the first time that they've seen it. So again, it's a great mechanism. If you haven't done it, law enforcement, CISA, they will partner with you in those exercises and make you better and your customers better.
Yeah. What about spreading the word on how bad or how dangerous it is? We had another episode on Threat Talks about, we call it Hack the Boat is the title. What we did there is we took a PLC, a real world PLC from like a container ship, and rebuilt a boat with a ballast system and all that. It was surprising to us how easy, once you are on the PLC, so the whole, in my view, it should be really difficult to get there, but once you're there,
it's pretty easy to use once you're on it.
Yeah, the boat would capsize fairly easily. So is there enough awareness about this? I mean, you mentioned lots of incidents. Is this part of the issue, or are we past that by now?
I think people who have OT are aware of what could go wrong with operating technology. I think give
some examples from experience. What the
again,
things that went wrong.
Again, and I don't think it has to necessarily. What I'm trying to get at is that I think a lot of people have thought about what happens when you have disruption to your operating technology from all hazards, from natural disasters taking something out, a fire. there's a lot of things that could impact OT. I think the conversation between cybersecurity and OT and the operating technology side of physical processes has been going on for some time. I think what we have seen is just a lot more recognition that the cyber threat actors also understand how important this technology is to the economy, to confidence of consumers and critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so it's just continuing to make sure that people are tracking this. Yes, there were many incidents, again, but they didn't have significant impact. And so sometimes when you don't have significant impact, it doesn't resonate as much with folks as you do when there is a big one to point towards. And
maybe
not that I'm asked, I want to be very clear. I do not want there to be a big example to point towards. But that is kind of the situation we're in, is we're still trying to have these conversations and identify what are the, where are those layers where we see internet-facing OT devices. We're still learning some of this as we go along.
And we have seen customers impacted on the OT side with ransomware and things like that. And even when and to the extent that IT is connected to OT, if the IT infrastructure is compromised, let's say with a threat actor or ransomware, they're going to move laterally into the OT area, or likely to move into the OT area if they can, because then they could wreak havoc there as well.
I remember a certain incident in the harbor of Rotterdam where that went down because of Petya. Indeed, yeah. It can go wrong really well.
It can go
really
wrong,
big, yeah.
and you can have significant impact to economies and communities.
Yeah, I may have a bit too much skin in the game here because I live in the Netherlands and my home is actually below sea level. So I hope that
the pumps are working.
The pumps should be working. Yeah,
and
please.
The dams.
And it needs power, it needs internet, it needs everything. Huh?
Because some of the things you can do is with OT, you can move to manual processes and keep things functioning. But the question is, how long can you operate on manual?
So we had an episode on this before, and apparently we do have a backup system on this. So and then people go in cars to the dikes and to the pumps and all that, and they can manually override everything. However, the problem there is that the people that know how to do this are going to be retired in 5 years. So this is the next big issue.
Yeah, it gets to that. Yes, we could do it manually, but how many people do we have to do it manually, and how long can they do it?
When was the last time you practiced doing it?
Exactly.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. All right. So let's see what we can do about this. Patrick, you mentioned in the introduction we talked about the initiative of CISA, the Installed Base Initiative. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that is?
Sure. So this is in partnership with the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency out of DHS CISA, their vulnerability management team, and we also partner with a company called BitSite. On this, we started it back in 2023. But what we're doing is we identified equipment that's facing the internet, Schneider Electric equipment that's facing the internet that was installed many years ago, sometimes more recently, but not in line with our recommendations. Some of this equipment should not be facing the internet. It could be a PLC, it could be a building management equipment, it could be something like that. But so what we did is we partnered with BitSite to identify these assets. We've given them access to our labs to try to identify the protocols for these types of equipment. Then they scan and they look for it. They give us the IP for those devices, and we know exactly the type of device it is. We know the patch level.
You're talking about a scan that has to be done within the environment then?
Outside.
Oh, outside.
It's actually outside.
So it's a bit like Shodan, but then...
Similar to Shodan, and we supplement it with devices like Shodan or applications like Shodan. And then for devices where we can identify the asset owner, because when the IP comes back, if we're able to look it up and identify, company ABC, then someone from my team, for instance, and this is a global project, by the way, someone from Schneider Electric would reach out to that asset owner and say, listen, we found this piece of equipment. It wasn't designed to be facing the internet. Here's the IP address. Here's the protocol that it's running. You might want to secure it better, or at least remediate it. And then here's our recommendations on how to remediate that. So unfortunately, 99% of the time, it's going to come back to a telco. The IP address is going to come back to a telco. It's going to come back to an ISP of some sort. So we don't know who the
so this remote DSL line we were talking about, that was
a 5G device, that 5G
device,
that 5G device, 40 miles outside of town that's in Dallas that's monitoring a well, may not be the right one. So
you know
anyway,
the area, like from GeoIP maybe. The states.
We can definitely tell the telco name and things like that, but and vicinity, but we don't know who it belongs to, who the asset owner is. So what we do is we pass that information to CISA. They have what's called administrative subpoena power, and they validate what we give them, and they confirm that it is vulnerable just by its nature, and then they issue a administrative subpoena to the telco. Let's say company ABC telco for subscriber information at a specific time and date that we identified it, and then they get that information. They identify that it belongs to company XYZ, located here. So then they actually go out and make the notification on and they have this program themselves, but we just supplement it with our information. So then they go out and they notify the asset owner. They give them the information that we've provided about that asset, how to secure it better, and then they make that notification. And then we look. We never know who the asset owner is. It's because of the secrecy requirements around administrative subpoena. But we're able to we work with them to know what critical infrastructure, if at all, it was in, and whether there was energy, water, which sector. And then we monitor for it. We monitor to see if it changes, if it remediates, if it actually comes off.
So you know the trend then.
So
you know how big the problem is and how far you've gone.
I know how big it is. I know, and it changes, all the time because it's dynamic.
Of course.
But I know how successful we are in getting remediation. Look, my team laughs at me because I say, look, I want to get to 90%. I want to get to 100%. And I know I'll never get to 100 because there are reasons, as we talked about, Caitlin, that devices, as long as they put in some type of compensated control, they may not even be aware that device was out there. It's an orphan device, like you said. It could have been something that IT, that CISA didn't even know about. It was something that's being managed in the facilities. So we monitor for that.
So even though through this subpoena process, the company that owns the IP that uses it.
So Schneider doesn't know.
I never know that.
CISA knows.
No, I understand. Yep. But CISA can come up to you as an OT operating company.
Yes.
Then they tell you, hey, list this IP, and then the company itself doesn't know what to do because it's lost.
Correct. Well, ideally they get to the right person, right? Ideally they get to the right person. We're trying to reach. Whether it's the CISO or ideally they have a relationship with them ahead of time. But look, it could be everything from a car wash to an energy company, right? Because PLCs are in car washes. It could be anything from a hospital to a police station. So look, our goal is to just reduce the threat landscape that threat actors have. We want to make our customers more secure. And working with CISA has been a great partnership. Working with BitSite's been a great partnership. And it's not a Schneider Electric issue, as you mentioned, Caitlin. Protocols are I'd love to say that Schneider is the only one that has equipment in critical infrastructure, but we're not. We have a lot of competitors, a lot of great equipment out there, but the protocols can be shared. Can be same.
Yeah. You have a common goal without being competitive,
right? Oh, look, security is not a competitive sport, okay? But this year we're hoping to bring.
I'll quote you on that because that's not necessarily always the practice. Sharing threat intel.
The people that do security have been doing it for a long time don't look at it. It's a collaborative effort. Look, you're here to help people. We're here to keep the bad guys off your door and out of your business, okay? And so my goal and any other security professional, that's what we do. So ideally, we're going to be bringing in with CISA, I should say, we'll be bringing in other OEMs like Schneider to join us very soon. Hopefully, we'll bring in other federal agencies that maybe be responsible for the critical infrastructure of a certain area, like EPA for water or something like that, so that we can join forces and ideally, look, we were in 2024, we were kind of like in a learning phase. 2025, we're actually standing up erect. We're walking, and we want to go to volume.
You'll have an iPhone in your hand all the time soon.
Yeah, we want to go to volume. We want to like if we don't increase the volume of referrals on a monthly basis, my grandkids will be doing this doing this program. So
it needs to speed up.
We need to speed up. We want to see the remediation numbers up. What's really important to me is an asset owner, when they're contacted by CISA or they're contacted by someone from Schneider or another OEM as they join, they understand what the risk is. They understand what they're being told, and they make a change. Similar to, I'm sure Caitlin is really familiar with this. Look, for years, the FBI's come to your door and said, hey, you might want to check this IP address, but they didn't tell you what it was for. Well, you knew you had an intrusion. They're notifying you that you have an active or historical intrusion. You might want to look at this. Similar to that type of response, I'd love to see the same response from asset owners to at least look into it, understand what the risk is.
Who do you need help from? If there's in the audience people that understand this and want to participate, how can they do that?
Well, number one, from an asset owner perspective,
maybe other energy companies, water companies, organizations that deal with OT that recognize the problem have a hard time getting their asset management right, and could have some help.
No, well, number one, you can always do a showdown and your own IPs and figure it out. That's as you mentioned.
That's actually one of the best practices I would suggest is
really?
Do your own scan of your network to identify where some of these technologies are, so that you can, and you should be doing that continuously. It should not be a one and done, because as we said, sometimes things pop up online. So that is one thing that I would say I would request everyone to do, is much like we scan for our IT assets that are connected to the internet without a firewall or a VPN or some,
Can't you simply take the bill of all your ISP links and 4G and everything and just and figure out the IPs and track them all down?
If only it was that simple.
I wish.
Everybody would do that.
If everybody would do that, then you'd be putting me out of a job.
I don't think people are aware of the risk.
Yes,
and that's if they were, they would, right? And so the idea is that when you are contacted, if CISA comes, if Schneider comes, if some other OEM comes and makes you aware of it, and the other side of that is let us know if you're going to do something about it, because we want to, from my standpoint, I want to know why it was facing the internet, because then for instance, it's integrators and partners that actually install this equipment. It's not always done by the OEM. It's not always done by the asset owner. It's done by third parties. So part of our maturity of this program will be to make integrators and partners aware of the right way to install equipment, because and it's called secure by operation. It's a concept we've come up with. It's called secure by operation. And really what that is, it's
a that's big in Schneider, right? That's big in Schneider.
Well,
because of you.
Well, it's something that we've it's just recently published this week on our website, by the way. And
we'll include a link in the show notes with the link to your self-assessment that you said.
Yeah, and the document on our website is called Securing the Infrastructure. Securing Infrastructure, I think it's called. I'll tell you what it's called. Hang on a second. It's over here. I just want to take a quick look. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
It's called Securing Critical Infrastructure. And really what it is a relationship between the OEMs who manufacture products. So we have a secure by design. So from the time it's developed to the time it's commissioned and the time it's maintained at the asset owner, an OEM has responsibility. How to train and inform integrators how to install the equipment and make that information available to them. And then from a asset owner perspective, it's patching it, it's maintaining it, it's maintaining a relationship with the OEM, because OEMs are responsible to patch and rectify and remediate vulnerabilities. Well, if you have a piece of equipment, an OEM may not realize you own it. So look for those. Look
Mhm.
for those patches. Look for because they're on our website.
Honestly, if it's about
Mhm.
OT, I always write off patching as a countermeasure, honestly, because we know where we're going to be behind anyway, and that's fine. I mean, there's so many other controls we can do,
So
right?
yep.
If we control the flows.
But secure by operation is really it's a life cycle of a product
Mhm.
from the time it's designed to the time it's commissioned and maintained by the asset owner. But again, it's a relationship. I view it as an ongoing relationship between the manufacturer and the asset owner.
There's one thing that I want to do. It's what our regular viewers and listeners know about. It's the treasure hunt, because some of our viewers are currently waiting to win a T-shirt. So let's cater to that. This, as you know, it's this T-shirt that you can get. The first 200 viewers that get us the code actually get one shipped. So be sure to have your send button ready. I'll say the code only once. It's 052506, and email this to code@threat-talks.com, and you'll be the proud owner of one of those. One more question on this initiative. We're talking about organizations like companies that have a phone number and an IT department and CISA probably. Do you also see private homes appearing there? For example, solar panels. I can imagine that is also a problem, and they don't have many homes do not have a CISO. Last time I checked, so it may also be because if you can switch on and off every minute all solar panels in a state, up down, that will be disruptive, I guess.
It's a great question. We have not seen that. The information that we're able to get from CISA when they do the notification is strictly which critical infrastructure.
So we would have to ask CISA, and they cannot answer.
Well, and there's a category. There's a like a catch-all category, non-identified critical infrastructure, and then maybe it falls into that range.
Do you publish statistics, or are you planning to?
I have statistics. I'm using them during presentations, but I've been more than happy to give you current statistics on those. The remediation rates, as I said, the remediation rate is not where I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not where CISA wants it to be. We're probably just shy of 50%, but I'd love to get it. I think it needs to be closer to the high,
Please like this video. It means that more people see this, and then they know that they need to respond to those emails.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, these are actually in-person meetings. They actually go out. I mean, when I make a notification, it's a phone call generally. I want to be able to talk to somebody. When CISA does it, they actually visit the location.
Nice. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. Thank you very much. I mean, I wish everybody did this in cybersecurity for the greater good, right? I mean, this is so effective, I think. Yeah. One last thing I want to talk about is a little bit, if we step a little bit up to the level of the CISO, of the board, what do you need to do to combat this problem? Apart from participating in a program like this, probably, do you have a few? Do you have some advice for your fellow CISOs, and maybe what you would say to your CEO on how to make OT more secure and prevent disasters we talked about from happening?
From my perspective, I'd say, I'm a pretty competitive guy. I'm here, but sitting here with Caitlin Clarke. Come on, I mean, it's not. But my thought is be in it to win it. Understand your complete environment. The OT environment is just as important as your IT environment.
But then what you're saying is it's so important. If it needs to be it needs to be a given, like a default. You need to put a lot of attention into the whole breadth of OT security. Right?
It's just as important as IT security.
I think we spent a lot in the IT side of the house. We talked a lot about secure by design and the life cycle of software, from installation to updates to making sure that we're continually monitoring that. From my perspective, I would love to see us getting rid of the delineation of IT and OT. It's all just technology. And so we need to, from a C-suite level, we need to understand our technology risks holistically.
We can't type in OT anymore. We can't type in IT anymore.
I mean, we can.
T.
Just it makes it so much shorter. You don't have to worry about is that a hyphen or a dash. It is just technology. And I think we need to start
There's
thinking
also
about
IoT,
it.
by the way.
That's Internet of Things. So there's no no, just joking. I think it's just important that we consider the entire tech stack within organizations. And this IT versus OT, as we've discussed, that line is very much blurred. And so I think it's important that we bring those together under, technology and really think about what is the impact of insecure devices, be they an IT device or an OT device, and have the same sort of governance over both.
Yeah, well, it sounds a lot like all the things that need to happen in OT. Companies have already done in IT. So let's copy the playbooks.
If you're an executive, I'd ask, if you're talking about IT, what are we doing in the OT environment, and how are we securing that, and what risks do we have?
Yeah,
and why isn't, if it hasn't been part of the conversation, why? Maybe it's over on the facility side, like we talked about. Maybe it's on the manufacturing side, and maybe it's not under the purview of the CISO. So
it might be under business operations, and sometimes that's not under the CISO.
Yeah, under the CISO or the CIO.
It depends on how an organization is.
All organizations are different, but
at that level,
speaking, we were talking about security. It would be a CISO. The CIO
and risk management
is more
IT
delivers the IT.
The securing of it under the CISO. Yeah.
Right.
Any advice on reporting issues if they happen?
Sure. This is one of my favorite topics. So reporting issues, communication's key, and sharing and being a good corporate citizen's important. I talked before about sharing and practicing and crisis management drills with the FBI and CISA, and developing communications to the various ISACs, like the Energy ISAC or even the Department of Energy, because we have a lot of equipment in the energy sector. If you're in the middle of an incident, transparency is key, and talking to your customers about the incident when they call and giving them as much information to protect themselves is vital. Sharing it with law enforcement is vital, because look, you want them to be able to get these bad guys the best they possibly can. Look, it's hard work, and in some cases, I know, CISOs have told me they're not allowed to share information outside the company for certain things. Look, I believe in the ability to share information with the FBI, and them giving you intelligence back helps protect you, because other victims have provided them with information. When we have incidents, and everybody has incidents. One of the first things I do is I share the indications of compromise, indicators of compromise, IOCs, and I share them with customers. I share them with the DOE. I share them with ISACs. I share them with the FBI as soon as we possibly can.
But then again, it's very much in your nature to do something for the greater good, right? But it's not necessarily.
It's not just my nature. I can do it, but I have executive support. So it is a corporate support.
Is that key? That there's no blame for doing wrong?
Well, no. I think we're good corporate citizens. I think I'm supported, encouraged by our executives to protect our customers, protect other companies from becoming victims. Look, as I said, security is a team sport, and it's a collaborative sport. I work with our customers. When a customer calls me and asks about an incident, I start from point when we discover it to where we are today.
On this table, we'll probably be agreeing on this very fast, but it's not like the common thing maybe.
I would say most incidents are probably not reported. I think, and again, there's a lot of new laws, new regulations coming into place in both the U.S. and around the world to start mandating incident reporting. I personally would love to see that more harmonized, so that we're asking the same questions and the same reporting timelines of companies. But what it does is as I said, a lot of, we all use similar technologies, right? Companies are using similar OT devices, and learning from one person, as we just talked about, why reinvent the wheel? Learning from one experience, the IOCs, the cyber threat indicators from one incident can help protect the next victim. And that's, I think, what we need to think about. How do we stop this from being an attractive target? We shut the digital doors to the cyber threat actors, and we get there by sharing the information.
Should we reward sharing? So it's not
should we incentivize sharing and find some way to incentivize that? I think so.
CISA
what does that look like?
Could send you a cake if you record it.
Well, I mean,
I don't know how.
I don't know how you incentivize it, but you surely do encourage it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I will tell you that when and this is the feedback I get from customers. They say, "Pat, gee, thanks for your transparency." Mm-hmm. And I say, "Look, I'm giving you the briefing that I never get."
Yeah.
I want to start the trend. I want you to better protect yourself, but I also, as I said, I'm giving you the briefing that hasn't been, read by 30 attorneys before I say something. Mm-hmm. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about protecting you.
Please pay it forward.
And well, the other part of that is, you want to give your customers confidence that you're handling the situation right. Okay, you're doing everything you can to respond. You're responding timely. You're capable, and we are. I view it that way. And to the extent that you can instill that confidence in your customers and you're building trust. And that's the last thing I want to do is lose trust. I don't want to say, gee, I can't answer that question. I haven't thought about it yet. Or I answer the question.
Most incidents that are solved in the open almost are those companies benefit most. Even stock prices go up if you have an incident and talk about it. That's what we see historically. That's so that could be a good reason.
I don't look at I don't do it for that reason, but no. I definitely look again. I
duly noted.
We take time really to build that trust.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm not going to lose it to say, well, I can't answer that question.
We can say this enough. If you're under attack or being attacked, there's no shame in it. It happens to the best.
There's no shame in it. And if you can help somebody else from going through that terrible day that you're going through, again.
And maybe every CEO can send an email to everyone in the company. You will not be fired for reporting a security incident.
Oh, that's healthy culture. Yeah. We see something, say something.
All right. Well, we unwrapped a lot. Report.
DHS days.
Yeah. We've copied it. We use it internally. See something, say something.
Yeah. Patrick and I both have experience in Homeland Security and FBI where that was what we said a lot of times in the counterterrorism world. See something, say something. Let's bring that to the cybersecurity world.
Quite a lot of takeaways for today. See something, say something. OT and IT should be T. Huh? We should treat them, at least from a security perspective, similar. Change your password. That's what you...
Change your password.
And I like being it to win it. You don't want to be second.
In it to win it, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I also heard you say compensating control. So if you have to put these pieces of equipment online, make sure you actually have something in like a firewall or some kind of proxy or whatever that actually makes all this
yes
securely enabled to the rest of the world. Thank you both. Very insightful discussion. We learned a lot, and I think lots of takeaways for our viewers. And let's hope that your percentages go up and that many people join forces and respond properly to those CISA emails or visits.
Yes.
And I'm interested to see how these numbers go up in a year from now. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
And to our viewers, thank you also for tuning in on another episode of Threat Talks. If you liked what you heard today, please like us because it helps us spread the word further to everybody else. And while you're in that section of your favorite podcast app, there's also a subscribe button. If you do that, next Tuesday there will be yet another episode in your inbox for you to enjoy. Thank you very much. And here from the offices of Venable in San Francisco, I say goodbye to you and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Onto It Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.